We are now going to be moving on to our next, well, the second half of this track, which is all about multiplayer. We're calling it Mastering Multiplayer, and it's sponsored by Photon. So before I do any of the introductions, we've got a little show reel from our sponsors, Photon, to share with you. So enjoy, and I will be back in just a minute. A huge, massive thank you to Photon, who are our sponsors of Mastering Multiplayer. And speaking of Photon, we've got Mark here. So hi, Mark, how are you?
Hi, Sophia. Very good. Good to see you.
You too. Good to have you here. You're going to be taking on the role of our superstar session and talking all about the secret source of multiplayer games. There we go. We can see it right there. But before that, I just want to check out, where are you coming at us from? Where are you based at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently in Montreal. So we just finished summer, like everyone. And yeah, definitely. And normally I would be in Helsinki right now. And but it's a pleasure to be with you all today, definitely. And thank you for the Pocket Gamer organization for organizing this wonderful event that everyone can share and learn. And it's all about networking. So it's a pleasure to be here today.
Fantastic. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. And before I let you get on with the talk, I just want to remind everyone, please continue the conversation in the chat and throw your questions for Mark into the Q&A. I'll pop back at the end and we'll go through the questions and get some answers.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Well, I'm here in the background if you need me, but over to you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Sophia. So yes, so this talk today is about the secret sauce of multiplayer game. First, for those who don't know Photon, so we've been in the multiplayer industry for more than 15 years, providing services for thousands of gaming developers. We have more than 600 million monthly active users across many games. There's hundreds of good games that are coming up with us as well in the next months and year. And but I'm not here to talk about Photon really much, but more about what is our industry all about in the multiplayer games. So let's get started. So first, how successful multiplayer games are. They are extremely successful. So they're at the top of almost every chart except for PC. So all the arts that you're seeing is games that are actually real time, and those are half arts. Is either you have in-game chats, or you can have leaderboards and share items with your friends. There's some aspects of multiplayer in it. But in short, like if you want to be successful and have a grossing games that is bringing back revenue to your business, then multiplayer is the way to go. So it's definitely something you have to consider in your game design. And regarding the internet as a whole, well, during COVID, there was a huge pressure on the overall bandwidth worldwide, and that made the operators to up their games to provide better online services. So a user that used to take 10 gigabits a month now is taking 20 to 25 gigabits a month. So then the download speed went up, the latency went down. But for us that make multiplayer games, that's actually absolutely no change at all. So just so you're aware, games takes about 3 to 4% of their overall bandwidth transfer worldwide. So it's not very important for ISPs, so internet service providers. So in short, internet doesn't like real-time games. And a good example is obviously Riot, that build their own private network to provide the best services for their user. So the whole reason is there's multiple ISPs level they're reselling bandwidth, and obviously games you try to take as less bandwidth as possible so that the packets are very small, so you can have more players in real time, and it's not as attractive for ISP. So maybe with time, this is going to get corrected, but still today we have issues on the overall internet regarding latency. And so in that case, well, you need very good developers, obviously, to build a good networking solution. So the next question is, when do you implement multiplayer? So something that you can build a single player game and make it multiplayer later, well, that's absolutely not the case. Obviously, you have to consider multiplayer from day one, from the game engine perspective, from how you're going to make your whole community play with your game and how they're going to interact between each other. But obviously, it's all about building the game itself, how you're going to network your objects as part of a developer side of view. And then for game design, obviously, it's much easier to have the mindset right away from the start and try to put it later. So the later you wait, the more costly it's going to be for you to integrate multiplayer aspect inside of your game. And then next part, which is a bit more should I say technical, we're going to go back to game design aspect of it, but still game design is in there, which is the game design leads to topology decisions. So what is network topologies? How all of your servers in the back are going to get connected, and how the players are going to find each other. So each of the different topology, which is either having a dedicated server, going in peer-to-peer, which you might have heard about with time, or having distributed simulation, they all have pros and cons, but one that is number one, which is where is the authority? So what is authority in the multiplayer world is if what is right and what is wrong, in short. So for example, can a player move more than 1 meter per second in a first-person shooter game? So if you put authority on the server that your player cannot, then obviously all the players cannot go as fast as that. But if the authority is in peer-to-peer, in a client hosted on a phone of someone, on a PC of someone, you lose all authority. So then the various topologies also put in place different costs that is associated. And cost going to be something you have to look at it both in development time and both in actually your operating expenses. So how much is going to cost you to run this game for X amount of players, to X amount of region around the world, and where you're going to go with your overall flow of building up the game. So yes, the game design leads the topology decision. If you're making a 2 to 4 player game, it could be that peer-to-peer is good for you, but if you fear that there's going to be hackers, if you have leaderboards, global leaderboards, of course, then you might want to have a dedicated server and have authority on top of it. So obviously this part can be a whole presentation on its own, but let's continue. So the whole point of making games is to bring players together. The biggest games in the world are only as successful as their communities. So both in the real world, the virtual world. So the two videos that you see at the bottom is Pokemon Go. So we all heard about those stampedes of people when there was a Snorlax spawning somewhere. And so it creates a bit of a mayhem. But the whole point is that it's the operation of agglomeration, is that once people see each other, they are attracted to it. They wonder what's going on. They want to know more about it. And that's entirely human. And that's really what you have to keep in mind. So as part of the operation of agglomeration, there's the 80-20 rule, which is that 80% of your players will go in 20% of the space. But then we're not all the same. We don't have the same psychology traits. Some likes to be number one. Some wants to be seen as the best. Some wants to manage a community. We all have different aspects in our life that makes us happy as players, but as individuals as well. So you have to provide multiple area or hubs for players to meet each other and be together. So groups that have similarities with you psychologically, you will be attracted to them. So you have to provide those areas for them to be able to mingle and chat and form affinities and create values between each other. So that way you're going to be able to have a better retention, in short, because those players will find friends, new friends. They're going to find people that they like, and they're going to want to be together. So one good mathematic formula you can look is the ZIP law. So that is ZIPF law. And that's really the attraction of people to more people. And so if you find friends, you want more friends. You want to gather people who are similar than you. So that's what you have to keep in mind. But how do you do that? So obviously you have to provide ways to communicate. You have to provide services for the players to be able to actually manage who are their groups and their affinities around them. So when you create lobbies, you should be also giving the possibility to create private lobbies where friends can invite friends and are privately together. You can also provide some password so that it's protected. Maybe you want to invite people, or maybe you want to make it public, but keep some of the slots private. So that way you're going to be able to really have your teammates and clanmates with you. And obviously, when you're speaking into a chat that is global versus a chat that is with your teammates, you don't have to provide the same rules. Because in a chat that is global, you want to be able to filter what is being either written or said. You want to blip words. So you can use voice detection in many ways to be able to squelch players as well. You should be able to vote up or down, depending on how you structure your social system. But having whitelisting in a global chat is usually the best, or when you're having someone that you're playing against that you don't know. So that way, at least, you can communicate in a way that is respectful, and that is very important. So let's continue. Bots. So bots, what is bots? Bots can be in many flavors what's going to make your game design go faster, both in development, but also improving that your game is fun. So it's good at the start of your iterations. So for example, if you're making pretty much any kind of multiplayer game, so if you want to play against someone, you need to ask a physical player to play the opponent. But when you have bots, all of a sudden you can play against them. And obviously, you're going to train those bots to be better. So you can have all different skills of bots. And then if you're playing in a game where, for example, it's a first-person shooter game or a MOBA or actually any kind, and one of your teammates leave, you can have a bot replacing that player for the meantime until maybe there was a connection issue or something like that. Maybe his phone ran out of battery, he needs to hook it back up and coming back. And then when the player comes back, the bot is out and the player continue to play. And obviously, you're going to be able to test out your game design or even your meta game if you have an end game to be able to be as much as successful as you can be. So don't be scared, obviously, of bots. There's actually thousands of games that are faking multiplayer. So we've all seen the .io generation of games where it fakes to be multiplayers, and those are all bots, obviously. Those bots, when we're talking about fake multiplayer games, are in the client, but when you want to make a real multiplayer games, then those bots should be on the server, authoritative. Back to where I was talking earlier regarding topologies. If those bots are on the client, then it's easier to cheat and hack, obviously. So don't be afraid of bots. Find the libraries that will make you comfortable and with your various moments in your game development, either for pathfinding or for actually, if it's casual game with words, then obviously you're going to be able to create opponents very fast and be able to find the fun in your game. And another ingredient to a good recipe for good multiplayer game is about SBMM, so skill-based matchmaking. So you can go skill-based, or you can do also a segment match. So what is the difference? So for maybe you have heard about ELO scoring or true skills or other formats which are based really about your rank. And then the matchmaking would be based on that. There's the other approach, which is, well, I want all my new players to play together. I want all the players of a certain region to play together as well. And then with time, maybe this player is more in line to talk a lot in his game. So you have to implement analytic over your matchmaking service to understand first if the players are actually having a fun game. Usually when players have a fun game, they play another one, but a good way to really make sure that they have a good game is that the game is actually a bit hard. If you make the game too easy for them, well, after 4 or 5 games of winning all the time, you're gonna be, well, there's not that much of a challenge. It's a bit boring. So I will just, play another game. But that's not what you want, obviously. So you need in a matchmaker to be fast. So that means that when you search for a game as a player, you shouldn't wait for a minute or 2 minutes, except you have no players. But still, you can still create a game with bots, as I said earlier. Another way to do it is to expand the search. So let's say you have some rules put in place, either by region or by latency or by skill, and then you're going to expand the search based on those criteria and make the range of those criteria much bigger. So that way you're going to be able to matchmake with other players. A good example is about time zone. So if you're in Australia versus if you're in North America or Europe or in Asia, there's all different topologies regarding ISPs and latency speed, but also there's sometimes just no players at all. So you still want to play, and then you're going to be matchmake with someone that is a few thousand kilometers away. And then obviously you're going to be affected by latency. But still you got to have a game, which is the important part that the player wants. And you try to deliver the best server, either on the edge or elsewhere, so that the player can find a nice place to play and have fun between each other. Another aspect is the in-game balancing. So when you play, obviously, there's a chance that the other team is a lot better than yours, or your team is better than the other one. And as I was saying earlier, when a game is too easy or when a game is way too hard, then the players are going to start leaving. So then you're going to have an imbalance in the numbers of players. So earlier that was Overwatch we're seeing regarding the matchmaking. They also provide in Overwatch, as you saw at the bottom, really good ways to spend your time as you're waiting. But when you're playing a game and there's no way to change the balancing, meaning you cannot switch of teams, then obviously it's all about waiting. So you're just waiting there and waiting that the game ends, in short. So the screenshot here is for Battlefield 5, but it happens in many other games as well. So it's very important that you offer the possibilities for the players to change of teams as they're playing, either based on rule sets, such as what you're seeing now. Okay, there's half the team that is gone. So maybe it's time to propose to the other players to change of teams, or just pretty much make it automatically. Just take a group of players. If they are teams, a team of 4, a team of 6, doesn't matter. Take the whole team and change it to the other side, and that way the game's going to be a bit more fun. But you need to communicate with your players about what's going on so that they know exactly where things are going. And obviously, when you are playing with others, it's good when there's bonuses when you're playing with friends of yours. So that they feel like, it's not only that we're better as a team, but we're also have more rewards. So it's a good way to make those plans for them to play every night at 9 p.m. and move forward. So another aspect of the ingredients is taking care of the cheaters and the hackers. As I said earlier, if you have a peer-to-peer game, it's easier to hack. So a good example here is Virtual Vein. You can find on YouTube. He has many videos where he goes in games, especially the one with the Call of Duty, like what we're seeing now. And in Call of Duty, when you're in the lobby is hosted on the computer of someone, like a player. So then you can find the IP, and in this case, you find the IP with a few phishing questions while playing. He was able to find his Facebook profile and his phone number, and as he plays, he actually called the person. These kind of cheats or hack can be at various levels. It can be also to be better in the game. There's multiple games where you can buy hacks to be better. And we've seen many esports tournament where even people were coming with their mouse and in the mouse there was a chip for auto aim or things like that. You can just activate it, and as they're playing, they're going to start to win. So hacking has been always there. Would be that will not change, especially for aimbots and other kind of cheats. But if you put authority on the server one more time, then you're gonna be you have less hacking, obviously. So lots of analytics. You have to look at the chat logs, and the client should never be trusted ever. So as you play, you're going to be able to distinguish also the connectivity when it's hosted on a player. The latency is not as good as when it is hosted on the server, and that's something to take care of. And in terms of engines, there is also going into the determinism. So determinism is when all of the simulations, so either on the server or on all the clients, actually have a common, most of the time, physics system. So they all agree that based on physics, this is how things should happen. And then you send inputs, and those inputs are being passed to the server. And then there's rules that are put together, and then there's an upload from the server to the various clients out there that will make the overall game run smoothly everywhere. But also they're going to be less hacked because most of the game is based on inputs, and then those inputs are based into a physics system. So that way you're going to be very much able to give the best, should I say, simulation both on the server and the client, but also prevent cheating. So it's a good way to do networking. So definitely you have to look at that. So we've talked about many ingredients in this talk. So I've put them all into a bunch of points. So obviously, all of those, as I said earlier, can be expanded much more. You don't become a cook with just ingredients, so you have to cook it as well and be better at it. But definitely, you have to ask yourself, well, first, how I'm going to make my multiplayer game, how I'm going to expand the game after it's launched. Because really, when you make a multiplayer game, it's building it, making sure it's fun, doing a lot of QA, using those multiple testers that they test one time and then they don't play the game again. So you need a lot of new testers, a lot of humans that needs to try it out and have that first impression that the game is good. And then eventually you're going to launch the game. And once you launch the game, that's where really everything starts, where the community, the support, the various services, you want to scale in various regions. You want to localize, you want to culturalize your content. You want to bring the various Happy New Years of their various calendars out there, but also the holidays in countries, and have proper live ops on top of your community so that everyone sees something in the very near future that you can participate and have fun. But still, when we go back to the lower level of making multiplayer game, it's more about where do you want to start. So there's obviously multiple books about multiplayer. Networking engineers that are good is super rare. They're all taken everywhere. But you can, if you're a developer and you're interested by that, there's some open source libraries that will get you started, that will move you forward. And then regarding live operation, there's again multiple books about it, most about the gaming services and game design. But what I suggest very much if you want to go in live ops and is to go into psychology, because that's when you're really going to find out about how to do price match and other scenarios that's going to improve both your retention, your conversion rate, and obviously to have more players. And if you want to go a little bit faster, obviously there's us, Photon. So we do provide all types of topologies with Fusion, and we have a deterministic engine that we call Quantum. So Fusion is a new service. It's about to be launched in a couple of weeks, very soon. It's support up to 200 players at 60 Hertz. So that's actually better than many games that are offered out there. We do guarantee very good latency as well, so that way you don't have to think about how you're going to work with all those ISPs I was talking about earlier. And obviously, all kind of games are possible to be built with us. So yeah, so as I was saying, we support all these topologies, and that way you're going to be able to find which one that fits with your business, with your game design, and then move forward from that. So that was some of the secret sauce of multiplayer game. Obviously, we have a whole track today. We're going to talk more about this. There's Guy Simmons that's following me. And then we have a fireside chat with Paul Bettner. That should be very, very interesting as well. So don't miss it. A lot of expertise that needs to be shared. And that way we're all going to be a bit more avant-garde regarding multiplayer games.
Yeah, and thank you, Mark, for such a fascinating talk. And I know you're going to be leading us through this track before I rejoin at the end, just to remind everyone of what they can expect tomorrow. But save you asking yourself your own questions. I thought I would.
That's right.
I would
Thank you,
jump
Sophia.
in and go through the questions with you, and then I can leave it over to you. But we've got a little bit of time, so I'm going to dive into some questions. First one from Yogesh is, what are the trends that you're seeing in multiplayer games at the moment? What kind of games are players attracted
to? Yeah, definitely. So very good question. So obviously we do see hundreds of games every month and new games that people have proposed, game designs, and they want to choose their technology. So we see a lot of them. What is extremely popular right now is co-op games. So it's games that you're playing with others against bots and NPCs. So that is very much the trend regarding developers right now. And otherwise, it's a big battle game. So think battle royale, but bigger, more complex. So we all know the Warzone, the Apex Legends, the Scavengers recently, and obviously PUBG and all the others. So that, which is very much shooter, and that's it. But now you have battle games are coming where the battle doesn't last 30 minutes, but it lasts, 2-3 days, where players have actually to, a bit like Rust, where they have to either build a camp or something like that, and then get resources and move forward. There's a bit of Valheim in those ideology that we're seeing. And then obviously casual, super popular casual games that gives real money prices, getting more and more popular. What happened with COVID is that obviously all of the lands and whatnot closed down. So most of the current events are online, and those are cash prize driven anyway, but then it's not physical. So there's a bunch of new services like Skills and others that came up. And then for us, well, they picked up the deterministic engines so that there are no cheating. Everyone have the very low latency, and they are able to compete. So that is what is the most popular these days. Obviously VR, lots of VR, and that will continue to grow. Yeah, so a lot of unique new things. That's what I will say. Nothing you have seen so far. That's what it is.
Fantastic. And you actually touched on cheating there, but one of the other questions is about like how prevalent cheating is. Is it a big problem in multiplayer gaming at the moment?
Yeah. Well, it's always been there. So as soon as there are other players, there's going to be cheaters, because at the moment you have a leaderboard, there's going to be cheaters because people wants to be at the top. But one thing to keep in mind is that cheaters per se, obviously as through development, you have to take care of it, but taking care of cheaters won't make your game necessarily better. So you should spend more time in making good design, making sure the game is fun, and then later tackle cheaters. Because seriously, like cheaters, if you have a successful game, you're gonna spend the LTV of your game, right? Your lifetime value of your game at fixing bugs of cheaters. And those are usually the 1% to 2% of the players. Some AAA studios doesn't do anything for cheaters because they're like, well, why should I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every month in fixing something that I can just let it go on the side? So it's also a business decision. But the more you go to the east, the more there's cheaters regarding leaderboards. The more you are going to the Western, the more cheats you're gonna have for arming others somehow. So there's patterns over there. So depending what is cultural around your game, there's also a set of cheats that comes with it. Also, I say cheats, hackers that comes with it as well.
Yeah, and another question we've got from Dan is, taking into account issues with systems that can be abused, have you ever considered a system where the player can feedback to the matchmaking, whether they are being paired with opponents that are too easy, too hard, all that? Yeah, it seems like yes.
That's right. Definitely. So the more control you give to the players, the better, especially when they want to opt in into something, such as, hey, you know, these group of players, I don't want to play with them. Or as you're saying, like I've seen some players behaving bad in the game. I want to report them. So you have to give those tools. And that's the whole point of community and support. Like I always say that once you have a successful game, if you have bad support, if you have bad community, people are going to leave, period.
Yeah.
So you have to give those services in hand so that they are able to themselves as players being able to report and act and have, you know, more fun in the game. So I highly encourage that. And yes, there's multiple games that's doing that today. I think it's not enough. There's need to have more responsibility for the players, especially when there's big communities. But we see the change slowly. I mean, like, even if we go outside of gaming, if we look at Facebook and whatnot, it's still not regulated and things like that. So there's a lot of work to be done. But us as a community of game developers, we should take responsibility and give it to our players right away.
Yeah, and another question we've got here is, are the multiplayer challenges of mobile different from the multiplayer challenges of traditional, for example, PC games?
Yeah, that's 100%. So mobile and movement is a thing. So as let's say you're on a bus and a train, you're gonna have latency change. What we suggest there, if you go in a mobile game, is either to go through a deterministic engine or have a game that doesn't need a lot of twitchiness, like a car game, for example, that needs to go very fast. But if you go anyway, then you have to do a lot of predictions. So predictions toward where all the players are going right now, so that you're going to be able to simulate before the data comes in. So even if there is latency, even if there's moments where there's no connection at all, things are still running smoothly. So most of the time when you are in a deterministic engine, if you're in a team, let's say a team of 12, you're playing against other players, and you as a player start to have difficulty with your mobile connection, you're not on 5G yet or whatever, well then you still want to play. So what will happen most of the time is that you as a player, your view is going to start lagging, but the others, when they look at you, everything looks fine. So there's various strategy there to attack. But first, if you want to be successful in 2021, 2022 and beyond, you have to target mobile phones. So landlines, phone are not existing anymore. Kids needs to talk to each other, so they're gonna get a phone at one point, and that's gonna be their first platform, their first devices. It's very hard to find Xbox Series X today. It's very hard to find a PS5, and that will continue to be like this. Microsoft made the decisions to put all of their chip for the Xbox Series X in the cloud, so they can do cloud gaming on your phone. So this is going to be more and more relevant for industry as a whole. But definitely, when you have a mobile game that is in real-time connection, challenge rise up, and so you have to attack those by engineering.
Fantastic. Yeah, well,